Gods and saints. People of any age hold many things sacred. They might revere holy wells, stone circles, mountain tops, ruined churches, the remains of a good person, or even just a random piece of paper. Nowadays, folks might treasure family, money, and status. But it's a bit of a head-scratcher to figure out what exactly the ancient Britons considered sacred and why. To make matters more complicated, traditions spread like wildfire among the neighboring populations in what is now Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. So, the lines between Celtic, Roman, Welsh, and other influences all get a bit fuzzy, and deities were being adopted and tweaked left and right across different cultures and time periods. Oral tales were handed down from generation to generation, grandmother to grandchild. They were cherished as both history and valuable life lessons. Kings had their own crew of bards and historians who kept this sacred knowledge alive. Those bards could pull a personal lineage or an ancient tale out of thin air with their mad memory skills. Most of the tales, legends, beliefs, and histories we have discovered were transcribed by Christian priests, often well after the actual events. They sprinkled their Christian perspective into the mix. Modern scholars have to use their deduction skills, outside accounts, archaeology, forensic science, and the teeny-tiny bits that survived the test of time, just to figure out what the Britons held sacred. For instance, the Mabinogion collected loads of Welsh legends, including early versions of the classic characters Gwydion, Rhiannon, and Pwyll. But these deities are often melded into the greater Celtic pantheon along with Lugh, Bridget, and that crowd, as well as continental Gaulish entities like Epona or Cernunnos. Separating them out by present-day arbitrary borders is, if you'll excuse the reference, a Herculean task. Be that as it may, I've tried to extract gods and goddesses that are unique to the beliefs of people who lived in what is now England. Not perfect, not comprehensive, but my best attempt. The Britons were all about local flavor. Many of their deities were specific to a spring, river, or hill, and not widely worshipped across the land. Regardless, the Britons held on to their beliefs with fierce determination. Here is a peek at some of those powers explained or, at least, described. Gods and goddesses. Because of the many layers of other cultures overlaid on the Britons, we sometimes just have names, but no legends, no attributes. We no longer have any details to flesh out the ideals that the name was attached to. While there were plenty of fairies and spirits, deities were rather thin on the rocky ground, so to speak. Some entities who may have been revered as gods are now but names of kings in Geoffrey of Monmouth's histories, demoted from divinity by the passage of centuries. Bran. Known in Welsh as Bendigeidfran or Bran Fendigade, he's a giant and a king whose lore is steeped in magic and ancient heroism. Stories tell of his epic size that allowed him to wade through seas and his magical cauldron that could resurrect the dead. When his sister Branwen is mistreated by her Irish husband, Bran doesn't hesitate to cross the Irish Sea to rescue her, even if it leads to his own demise. After his death, Bran's head is said to have been buried in London, facing France as a protective charm against invasion. Brigantia. Initially revered by the Brigantes tribe in northern England, her name suggests high status or nobility. Often associated with victory, sovereignty, and protection, Brigantia was later syncretized with the Roman goddess Minerva and North African goddess Caelestis during the Roman occupation. Coventina. Her worship was primarily focused on water, revered as the guardian of rivers and wells near Caerburg on Hadrian's Wall. Offerings and dedicatory inscriptions were discovered at a well shrine. Known for her healing and purifying powers, Coventina represents the life-giving and sustaining properties of water, a vital resource in ancient societies. Bellaticadros. This deity was predominantly worshipped in the northwestern regions of Roman Britain. Often associated with war and destruction, Bellaticadros was revered by Roman soldiers stationed along Hadrian's Wall, indicating a likely syncretism with the Roman god Mars. Despite his martial attributes, he was also connected to the natural world, with the name Belatokadros possibly meaning fair shining one or fair slayer. Elan of the Ways. Often depicted as a guardian of pathways and, symbolically, as a guide through life's journey, Elan of the Ways is sometimes portrayed as an antlered figure. She's intimately connected with the natural world, embodying elements of wilderness. She also has some connection with dreams and shamanic journeys. Elan's pathways are believed to represent the migratory trails of reindeer, linking her with movement, transition, and transformation. Nantosuelta. Symbolizing abundance, domesticity, and possibly the afterlife, Nantosuelta is often depicted holding a house-shaped model, a symbol of domestic prosperity. She's linked with homesteads, fertility, and plenty. Occasionally, Nantosuelta is shown with a raven, a creature associated with the otherworld, suggesting a possible role as a psychopomp or guide of souls. Serona. In British and Gaulish mythology, Serona is often depicted with serpents, eggs, or dogs, symbols of healing and life force. She was particularly venerated at thermal and mineral springs. Interestingly, Serona was syncretized with the Greek and Roman goddess of wisdom, Athena/Minerva, during the Roman occupation, linking her to wisdom and strategic warfare. Alanus. A god from ancient British and Gaulish mythology, Alanus is often linked with healing, prophecy, and the sun. He's occasionally identified with the Roman god of medicine and healing, Apollo, due to their shared associations, indicating a likely syncretism during the Roman occupation of Britain. Although specific details about Alanus are scarce due to limited historical records, inscriptions invoking his name have been found around healing springs and sanctuaries. Nodens. This god is primarily associated with healing, the sea, hunting, and dogs. His worship was particularly prominent at the temple complex at Lydney Park in Gloucestershire, where numerous artifacts and inscriptions related to him have been discovered. Some interpret the name Nodens to imply catching, trapping, or snaring, linking him to hunting. It's also speculated that Nodens has connections to sleep and dreams, enhancing his healing associations. Herne the Hunter. This entity takes many forms, from a Windsor forest ghost to Cernunnos, an ancient god of the wild hunt. He wears antlers, rides a horse, harasses herds of cattle, and rides through the darkest forest during the night. He could have been related to the Norse god Odin, or European legends of the wild huntsman. Shakespeare wrote about him in The Merry Wives of Windsor. He showed up more recently in the BBC production of Robin of Sherwood in the 1980s. Sulis. This deity is celebrated as a goddess of healing and sacred waters. Her primary center of worship was the thermal springs at Bath, known as Aquae Sulis in Roman times, where she was revered for her healing powers. Sulis was syncretized with the Roman goddess Minerva during the Roman occupation, linking her to wisdom and strategic warfare. Despite this fusion of identities, Sulis maintained her unique connection to water, reflecting the importance of this life-sustaining element in ancient Britain society. Tyrannes. This god is associated with thunder and the forces of nature. His name, derived from the Celtic word for thunder, and his common depictions with a wheel and a thunderbolt, underscore his command over storms. During the Roman occupation, Tyrannes was likened to Jupiter, the Roman king of the gods in the sky, due to their shared control over weather, but he wasn't considered a leader of his pantheon. Epona. Originating in continental Gaul, Epona is primarily associated with horses, fertility, and sovereignty. As the sole Celtic deity adopted by the Romans, Epona had an extensive following. She is usually depicted riding or tending to horses, highlighting her role as a protector of equines. Her name, derived from the Gaulish word for horse, and her symbolic associations with fertility and power reflect the vital role horses played in ancient societies, both in practical terms and as symbols of status and wealth. Other gods. Obviously, listing every god or goddess that was worshipped within the land that is now England is way beyond the scope of this book. I've tried to highlight the more popular ones, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, associated with places within the land. Saints. Saint George. Where else can we start, but the patron saint of England? Saint George is best known for the famous legend of Saint George and the Dragon. Born to Christian parents in the late 3rd century, George followed his father's path and became a soldier in the Roman army. His faith led to his martyrdom under the reign of Emperor Diocletian, who enacted a series of severe persecutions against Christians. Saint George's defiance and subsequent death for his faith established his reputation as a defender of Christianity, and he was subsequently venerated as a saint. The legend of Saint George slaying a dragon emerged much later, in the 11th century, and bears the influence of earlier pagan myths. In the most well-known version of this tale, a dragon plagues a town, and the local people, to placate the creature, offer it sheep and even their children, chosen by lottery. When the king's daughter is selected, Saint George arrives, slays the dragon, and rescues the princess. The townsfolk abandon their paganism and embrace Christianity. This legend symbolizes the triumph of good over evil, with Saint George's bravery and righteousness epitomizing the virtues that would come to be associated with knighthood during the Middle Ages. Saint Augustine of Canterbury. Saint Augustine of Canterbury played a pivotal role in bringing Christianity to the Anglo-Saxons in the 6th century. Pope Gregory the Great sent the Benedictine monk to convert the pagan King Ethelbert of Kent. Augustine's mission was successful. He baptized the king, established the bishopric of Canterbury, and became its first archbishop. His efforts laid the foundation for the Christian Church in England. Saint Cuthbert. This saint served as a monk, bishop, and hermit, associated with the monasteries of Melrose and Lindisfarne in the 7th century. Renowned for his piety, diligence, and kindness, Cuthbert played a vital role in spiritual outreach, often journeying to remote villages to preach. His life of asceticism and deep connection with nature, particularly birds, remain symbolic of his saintly character. Saint Bede. Also known as the Venerable Bede, this monk was born in Northumbria in the 7th century. He is best known for his scholarly work, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglo-Rome, or the Ecclesiastical History of the English People, which offers a comprehensive account of the conversion of the English people to Christianity. Considered the father of English history, Bede's writings significantly influenced the understanding of England's religious and social development during the early Middle Ages. He was declared a Doctor of the Church by Pope Leo XIII in 1899. Saint Thomas Becket. This saint served as the Archbishop of Canterbury from 1162 until his murder in 1170. A close friend of King Henry II, Becket's appointment was expected to consolidate the king's control over the church. However, Becket proved to be a fervent defender of ecclesiastical rights against the king's attempts at infringement. This led to a severe conflict between the two, culminating in Becket's murder by 4 knights believed to be acting on the king's wishes. Becket's violent death in his cathedral shocked Christendom, and he was quickly canonized as a martyr for the Church, becoming a symbol of resistance against unjust secular authority. Saint Edward the Confessor. One of the last Anglo-Saxon kings of England, he reigned from 1042 to 1066 and was known for his deep religious devotion and piety. He is perhaps best known for commissioning the construction of Westminster Abbey, which was consecrated shortly before his death and remains one of England's most iconic religious sites. Edward is considered the patron saint of kings, difficult marriages, and separated spouses. Saint Ethelwold of Winchester. Saint Ethelwold was a significant figure in the 10th century monastic reform movement. He devoted himself to the reformation and standardization of monastic life based on the rule of Saint Benedict. He rebuilt monasteries, promoted learning, and played a vital role in the revival of monasticism in England. His Regularis Concordia, an adaptation of the monastic rule for English monasteries, was instrumental in shaping monastic culture. Saint Hilda of Whitby. As the founding abbess of the monastery at Whitby, she was known for her wisdom and was often consulted by kings and bishops. She played a crucial role in the Synod of Whitby in 664, which was held at her monastery and decided the calculation of Easter and other contentious issues between the Roman and Celtic branches of the Church in England. Saint Edmund the Martyr. The King of East Anglia was venerated as one of England's earliest patron saints. Known for his piety and just rule, Edmund's reign was abruptly ended in 869 or 870 when the Danes invaded England. According to legend, when captured, Edmund refused to renounce his Christian faith or serve as a vassal to the pagan invaders, leading to his execution. The Danes reportedly tied him to a tree, shot him full of arrows, and then beheaded him. Saint Alban. Saint Alban is celebrated as the first recorded British Christian martyr and the patron saint of converts and refugees. Tradition holds that he was a citizen of the Roman city of Verulamium, modern-day St. Albans, in the 3rd century, during a time of widespread Christian persecution. Upon providing shelter to a Christian priest and impressed by the priest's faith, Alban converted to Christianity. When soldiers came to arrest the sheltered priest, Alban dressed in the priest's cloak and was taken in his place, subsequently suffering execution. Summary. Without a crystal ball, we cannot know everything the ancient Britons held sacred. We can infer, we can guess, we can believe, but we cannot know. They seem to have revered powers that are attached to the land, the weather, the rivers, and the sea, forces that, to them, would have ruled their daily lives. A poor crop, a fierce storm, a bleak winter, any of these could spell out disaster and starvation for a poor crofter, living on the edge of a rocky island. Attempting to control this fate by appealing to a higher power would have been the only option given to them. With the advent of Christianity, this power was consolidated into the Father God, but he had many saints, or appointees, to help those on the ground. Many Christian priests appealed to the pagans by comparing their one true God with the pagan gods. One reason for December 25th being chosen as Christmas was to coincide with pagan rituals at Saturnalia and winter solstice.